Ironically, back in the mid 80's at University of Pittsburgh Pitt News, when I was writing Ritual Descent columns for the student newspaper, there were some normal things going on. And the clever thing that Mignon Wen did in stealing the script, and I call it stealing, not that because I didn't want, don't think somebody should have found it and made warning, but because it was the people who wrote it hiding it and falsifying its purpose. She was working with Oliver Stone and since in Disney, so since it was Oliver Stone and Disney, the idea that John Lennon was in on it and faked his own death is really not all that far fetched. We are dealing with Pink Floyd and so forth. But those things were not things I had any cognizance of. What was going on was that Reagan was messing up Central America, was bad talking people like my father. I didn't know he was slapping five at the Nelson Harrison barber shop with Ralph Proctor. I didn't know that they were on the phone with David Gergen and Alexander Duke, and none of that stuff would have been possible for me to understand. I was a street urchin. He managed to use Charlie Atkins, Aston's words, latch on to a job at Fall Medical Library. There was a Vietnamese girl I thought was really beautiful. And I tried to take some classes, but I didn't know sign language. I was too deaf. People would make a lot of off the cuff remarks I made. I tried to get my thinking processes and overcome my fear. I'm trying to get help and awareness. I sent a letter to Harper's and Wesley Posrod that started some kind of commotion. And I had a conversation with Evan Nauer where he gave me the rigmarole about the nature of reality. He's got a mother and sister to feed and stuff. For the cynicism, to defend the cynicism that everybody was, there was a lot of stomping around, and you had to be careful of the drug situation. It was really poisonous and toxic drug situation. And yet at the same time, you had to be careful of your peer um, welcome as well, because, the streets are very deadly. They tortured me, and I interviewed Peter Gabriel, and I was real happy about that because I thought maybe finally somebody with some sense would look at the way I was tortured. I was wrong to be happy about that. Peter Gabriel is one of the most vicious perpetrators of the trade of human trafficking. Once you realize that, he has songs glorifying rape and stuff. And that's, the reason why he was so excited at the prospect of castrating a vulnerable deaf poet. That's what he wanted to do. He said, came in like a, Clockwork Orange Private Eye, and called the neuroplasm that was making my eyes blink, rapid eye movement, evasion of the nature of reality, and so forth. Not really weird, That was custom balling Rusty. They lured me to Mount Desert where this girl had needle tracks and tattooed the Grim Reaper. And they had an attorney for hair protecting Donald Trump and Yoko Ono, and they don't know who. If the Green Party shows up on my father's obituary, it's really creepy. I didn't realize that these things were going on. I was just writing articles saying you shouldn't just use animals for vivisection censorship, things like this, which had them laughing and parading the animals in cages around me, ho ho ho, ho, like Pink Floyd stuff. So, like I saw the first things about AIDS come through. They were white cadavers from San Francisco. I was really offended by what was going on in Washington, D.C. editorials. Reagan holds fundamentalism, but Zappa came to Reagan's rescue. No, John Lennon, he was great hero of Reagan. And so it got muddy. You can have and they started playing a game on the University of Pittsburgh staff, faculty at Pittsburgh Press Gazette called me and pitted me against religious fundamentalism as humorous as a satire of my father's school of thought to vindicate Reagan and Lennon's partnership. You know, show us that you want to be an anti-Reagan Lenin so that we can show that you're betraying Reagan's top sacred friend, and we'll make you give tea after we drag you through glass some more to the murderers who tortured you. And this comes from Taiwan people. Ming-Na Wen. And Oliver Stone was in on, and Chomsky was in on. So what? That's Chomsky's attitude. So what? They torture people all over the world. Why shouldn't we grab an American kid and torture? For what? You know, and Ray was wrong, He was just casual. You went through hell, Jimmy. But, these kids, they don't like you're talking about. Your reputation is bad. And they were subjecting the persona to successive degradations of the X motive, so it would be subsumed into a larger structure dominated by its adversary. That's what they were writing about me in this situation. I was deaf, I was homeless. The only thing that prevented me from being homeless was finding a bed to sleep in with somebody. And they raced this van around a school bus, and I was the driver. No, those were Shulman's gangs who were the driver. I quit the job in fury over this. So I left Pittsburgh in trauma. But these people went to school with Ming-Na Wen. They were all working with Ming-Na Wen and Peter Gabriel, who Shulman dude who was stealing the books was giving Peter Gabriel the construction of the persona of the queer bait, as Greg Carlson nicely put it. You thought something normal was going on. It was editorializing it. It is. Save the earth. Stop being beasts to the poor in Central America. You know, I was just, Jeannie said her I was dangerous. She was just lie. Anybody in the right mind, and she taught me sign language so I could go back to school. I'm throwing garlands of roses at her feet. Thank you. She says thank you to me. I mean, deaf people have it rough in Pittsburgh. Nobody would teach me sign language. And she got attacked, sexual rape for teaching me sign language. I mean, it's horrifying. But because you don't cross the line, and Sharon Harp's crossed the line, they rip murdered her. That was a penny line. That was a sacred penny line. That's a sacred Brian Eno penny line. Oh, son, no, son. Thou follow your letter to the Kennedys and kill two more than they will. Yes, sir. No, son. And they put, I think you know what we're saying, they have Native American uh, email from Mercy Hospital in Pittsburgh where they give me the tulip, and then that thing comes up, that abscess comes up on my lip. When Steve Tang takes me out in the woods and feeds me some bat poop. I'm supposed to understand this stuff is going on. You got to be kidding me. Another time, Jimmy's a poet. He works at the library. And that's nice. Girl shows up, they say it's corruption, fall in love with somebody. When you're deaf, part timer in the union, you fall in love with somebody. That's corruption. What? It's not hard to show up, okay? You're turning to his dog and hinges and stuff. I go and tell my guy, these guys are the shaw troops of some kind of white supremacist movement. He's like, oh, get out of here. Oh, get out of here. I'm still very soft on Christian Robinson because he felt the same way. I didn't like Reagan. You know, he's a logical suspect, so it's also logical to assume that he was innocently framed. But why would they shoot him if they were innocently framing him? I mean, if he was innocent and they were framing him. He says, oh, no, I'd rather be in Philadelphia, which is where I was getting off the train where his attorneys had me for the job. And they start saying things like, connect the dots. And Martin Sheen shows up at this God-forsaken waitress happy hippie. Catholic workers dominion. He owns my name, he thinks, because he has vindicated the pedophiles who tortured me. He takes me out in the back seat of this car one time. He goes in to talk to this socialist weirdo for hours, leaving me sitting out in the car like a baby who's forgotten. What was I doing there? I was willless. I was just in a state of catatonia. I was terrified. I didn't know what was happening. Literally, disconnected from uncomprehension from what they were doing in a pre-seizure trance, which they had inculcated. Pittsburgh says I played all big. What's that supposed to mean? Play all big. I wrote editorial opinions to show that I had a mind of my own. I know now that Peter Gabriel was not a worthwhile person to be spending any time or energy communicating with. I was writing him things that were immediate to the circumstances I was in. The brain waves that were happening in my psyche. And strange things started to go on. And I started to try to explain, look, they set up a Venus flytrap operation on Mount Desert Island. And he's calling it an experience park. And talk to artists, technologists, Pentagon, Disney, in other words, with the experience park in mind. If they're lying about that, they burn down $10 million laboratory. That's obviously not an experience park. If they're lying about that, they can lie about anything. Oliver Stone has this thing called Wild Palms Readers. So you think you can't pull Houdini? They have all the material in the world. Reagan's attorneys who had me in D.C. when he comes out and waves to me the night before they shot Brady, he hands me a brochure. It says there's no such thing as objective reality, only what the jury believes. That's a loud cry of fabrication from double fantasy wizardry. And you can't, the bimbo-bology, super sophisticate UW dialectical braziers of Seattle, Washington, saying, no, 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 that's a felony thought. To tell the truth about the circumstances, it's a delusional felony thought. You're not allowed to go to school. when I showed my research, that my deans in Pittsburgh said, give us the historical basis. Don't get yourself in trouble by showing us your research. Give us the historical basis for what happened in Hollywood with the racist syndrome of Ronald Reagan. So I did. And they gave me like Ethnics 300 for it and said, get back to school. But the radical left in Seattle said, this is felony thinking. You may not go to school. I mean, it's not possible. It's deranged for these hallucinators who 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 forgive the black man Colin Powell for the weapons of mass destruction of Saddam Hussein's beheading. It's deranged of these Obama neggers, sycophants in Seattle, to imagine Umoja, that I could have known that these absurd sibling tendrils were enveloping me. It's deranged to think that I had anything to do with or contact with or was a secret obsession of Yoko Ono. To say I should have known that is deranged. To say, as saw Chuck Berry's drummer did, oh, were you on drugs when you? It's deranged. These people tortured me. They kidnapped me. They brutally, psychopathically tortured me. They brutal, slaughtering head blows over and over and over again when I was 12, 13 years old. And I looked like one of the fairies on House of the Holy. So that's the white. These people who torture me were all white Klansmen, and you can't get the NAACP to say a single intelligible, honest word about it. Not one single one of them will say an intelligible and honest word about what these killers did to me as a child. And it said, who cares? Who cares? Well, that's what they said. You know, these intellectuals, then they dare to talk about honor systems. It's deranged to think I could have known these kinds of psychopathies were going on behind the scenes. It's deranged. The only thing I was trying to do is make ends meet and have my girlfriend, so that maybe we could have children or something, Try to understand what I was missing in the world. Try to show that I could deserve better than have my head broken into and tortured and set up by museum thieves so that Oliver Stone could make a weird movie for the winos of Texas who honk around the old carousel club with his pals from the CIA, because Stone's the Grand Vizier of Pentagon Disney. I don't like you, Stone. Don't pretend I like you. Don't pretend that your greedy, filthy hand reaching out to me is going to be welcome. You tortured me for reporting torture. That's criminally insane.